The Sumerian languages are language isolates, or so we're told. What we do realize is that there are some similarities with modern languages and some Sumerian words. For example, if we take the word cane in English, it actually goes back to the word kwanu in Akkadian. And if you take this word kwanu and bring it to the future, you will see it's also related to the word channel because this word meant reed, as in a reed or a cane. But since it's a cane, it can also be a tube. So it can also be an opening. And as you can see, it's traced back by experts. Similarities like these are not few in number, but of course, they do not always represent a causal similarity and sometimes might represent a coincidence. But these coincidences can only be ignored if they make no sense whatsoever. Some people are unfamiliar with similarities like this, and so they tend to judge them and believe that there couldn't be a possibility of fusion. But this is foolish, especially in frontier research. Like I've said before, the Sumerians have influenced parts of Europe and they've influenced parts of Africa. And it is not a coincidence that some words found in the Sumerian dialect are found in Egypt, the Afroasiatic languages, and then found further south within the Bantu languages. Now, of course, if you ask people today where the Bantus came from, they'll say, oh, they came from West Africa or that Central African area. But here's the problem: the, the people in Africa didn't manifest in that area. There's pre Bantu people. And so they would have been somewhere in North Africa. And this is not based on nothing, it's based on a plurality of evidence, starting with, of course, experts who did DNA tests and also they've done bone measuring and all that teeth checking. And they found that the most similar people who lived pre Berber would have been the Bantu and Niger Congo people in North Africa. It says Mectoids are believed to have been assimilated during the Neolithic and early Bronze Age by the markers of the ensuing Capsian culture. Craniometric analysis by Sereno et al. Indicates that Ibero-Maurusians were closely related to early Hyalocene Capsians of the northwest Africa, as well as the Holocene Kiphians of the Sahara. Dental analysis by Irish 2016 indicates that Kiphian populations had close phonetic affinity with West African and Bantu speaking populations. This is why it's no surprise that Berber languages would have some words that originate from Bantu languages, and some Bantu languages would have some words that originate from Afroasiatic origin. If we read the genetics, it says a two-way admixture scenario using Natufian and modern sub-Saharan samples, including West African and East African samples, as reference populations inferred that the seven Terphalit individuals are modeled genetically as 63% Natufian related and 36.5% sub-Saharan African ancestry, with the latter having both West African-like and East African-like affinities, with no apparent gene flow from the Epigravichian culture of Paleolithic Southern Europe. The scientists indicated that further ancient DNA testing at other Ibero-Maurusian archaeological sites would be necessary to determine whether the Terphalite samples were representative of the border Ibero-Maurusian gene pool. The sub-Saharan African ancestry of Terphalite population is indicated to be drawn out. most of all by West Africans, e.g., Yoruba, Mende, Zhuang, indicated that the sub-Saharan African DNA of Terfalart populations have similarities with the remnant of the more basal sub-Saharan African lineage. Basal West African lineage shared between Yoruba and Mende peoples. Additionally, the sub-Saharan African DNA in the Trifalot populations may be best represented by modern West Africans. We need to get rid of this idea of this imaginary force field that stops West Africans and Central Africans from moving into North Africa. Like I said again, during the Berber slave era, they used to walk slaves through the Sahara. So even when the Sahara wasn't green, which it was for the most part of history, even when it wasn't green, you could still cross it. And of course, like I said, we got the genetics and also the skull cranium technology to prove it. But of course, we're not done. If we look at languages, according to MacDonald, 2003 states, when one considers the African populations of the terminal Pleistocene, the seemingly unified physical type of these dwelling in North African refugia, mectoid, and their eventual cultural assimilation of contemporary populations living in West Africa coast refugia, then language homelands of Niger Congo and Nilo-Saharan between the Maghreb and the Nile Valley are strongly suggested. Further, in light of the Niger Saharan macrophylum hypothesis, Blench Volume 3 and 1995C, a sort of unity for Niger-Saharan speakers would seem likely during the late and terminal Pleistocene, 20,000 to 12,000 BP. In essence, a Niger-Saharan model from an archaeological perspective would progress as follows. Proto-Niger-Saharan speakers may be represented by the post-Aterian mectoid refuge, populations of North African littoral and highlands 20,000 BP. Language diversification would have accelerated when populations began to expand into the Sahara from North Africa refugia. At the beginning of the Holocene, 12,000 to 10,000 BP. Blench 2019 states the linguistic affiliation of North Africa forager populations who come south is difficult to establish, as they probably represented a language phylum or phyla now vanished. These populations are called Paleo-Berber, paleo meaning before, in the literature, but there is no evidence they spoke a language in any way connected with modern Berber. Prior to the expansion of Berber and the Arabic, unknown but distinct languages would have been spoken in both the Sahara and along the North African coast. These languages can be referred to as Old North African or ONA. With no presupposition as to their genetic affiliations, it is possible they were related to the former languages of the Iber-Maurutians, such as Tartessian archaeologically. These must be identified with the Capsian and its predecessors. Although the languages spoken in the first period of the Neolithic in the Maghreb would also have been ONA, but the completeness with which Berber eliminated ONA means little can be said about it. The Berber roots, which are not of Afroasiatic origin, may reflect these languages, or simply the long period of differentiation from the mainstream of the Afroasiatic lexicon. With this in mind, we have to make three considerations. The first one is the word aman, meaning water in Berber, the word amanzi, meaning water in Bantu languages, and the word aman, meaning water in Nilo-Saharan languages. This if we look at the context, throwing all of this information into a bucket seems less of a coincidence and more of a direct reflection of a language similarity. The ancient Roman writer Strabo says in his book Geography, Book 17, in the earlier parts of my work, I have already said many things about the Ethiopian tribes, so that the description of their country may be said to be included with that of Egypt. In general, the extremates of the inhabited world, which lie alongside the part of the earth that is not temperate and habitable because of the heat or cold, must needs be defective and inferior to the temperature part. He carries on after this, making cultural similarities between Egyptians and Ethiopians, which I will save for another video. Roger Marsh Blank, who is a British linguistic and ethnomusicologist and development Egyptologist, he's the one who claims that the sort of Asiatic languages or Afroasiatic languages are related to the Bantu languages in some ways. And this is not a rare thing within linguists, which he is. It's not rare. Almost every linguist can see almost immediately similarities between the Bantu language and the Afroasiatic languages, even the Semitic versions. And I'm talking about all of them. I'm talking about the ones who say that the Afroasiatic languages come from the Levant and the ones that say that the Afroasiatic languages come from Africa. All of them. They've got this thing of like, okay, and some of them even go as far as to say that the Bantu languages are more like dialects than a different language, and that their bigger language group would be somewhere within the Afroasiatic group because they're so close to each other that they almost seem like one language with various dialects rather than a completely unique language group.
Ma, yimma,
umama,
inna, anna, immi.
So you have the Bantu word mama, which can be shortened to ma, and you have the Zulu word nina, which is the same as the one that he's showing at the bottom.
Ma, yimma, inna, anna, immi. Ma, yimma, inna, anna, immi. Baba, ibba, abba. Baba, ibba, abba.
ubaba, ubaba,
Baba, ibba, abba. Uma, gma. O, ma. O, ma.
This is a very unique version of the word brother, meaning my brother, ume. The you can see means my and or belonging to, and ma meaning belonging to the mother. And in Bantu languages, you would say ea ma or oama, meaning belonging to my mother. This is my brother belonging to my mother.
Wilt, ma. Wilt, ma.
Unlike Afroasiatic languages, the Bantu languages are not gendered, but the Bantu word would be datwetu for sister.
Baba amgar, dadda. Baba amgar, dadda.
In Bantu languages, it's baba mkulu or baba omkulu, means grandfather or big father. Grandfather. It can also mean grandfather's brother or uncle in some regional dialects of Bantu. But for the most part, Bantu languages, Baba Kulu means grandfather.
So, ubaba, omkhulu. Do you hear that? ubaba, omkhulu. We put in an adjective there to describe which father we are talking about, because all your father's brothers are your fathers as well.
If we look into the Amazigh dictionary, which is a Berber language, you can see there that mother is ma and grandmother is mahulu or mahla. I don't know how you say the word, but you can see it's HLU. And as you can see here, it's listed with grandfather. So it's grandfather, baba ether, mama ether, which is grandmother, and grandparent ether. But to me, it looks like ulu or hulu, which would be the same as the Bantu kulu.
Tarwa, arrow, tarwa, arrow, tarwa, arrow.
The Bantu equivalent of this word is mtwana or mwana or mbwana. It means offspring, and you could be called this word even in your adulthood, but it means child. In some cases, people use it to describe a beautiful woman.
Tarwaino, arrowino.
This word inu, as we've described before, is an Afroasiatic word, na, and inu, tarwa inu, would be mtwana wami, or my child, in Bantu.
Ara, ammi, iwi.
This word is similar to the word fana, which means boy child, but it also means to look the same. And so the word boy child means he looks like his father. My final point is if you look at the Afroasiatic numbers, as we did last time, you see here that Yan is Inye, or Inye, Ian is Inye, which is one, or Daya, you can see Daya there in Hausa is also part of this Inye. Y's and W can sometimes change from language to language, just like the word Inye, which means one. There's Imwe and Imboy, which also means one in Bantu dialects, but you can see that the Y has now turned to a W. And so it's possible that Wa in Wahid is this Yan, and Daya, the Ya part in Daya, is this one as well. And Wa'o in Egyptian is this one as well. But this is only if you plug in the Bantu corresponding linguistic change method. Now, some Bantu words don't use inye for one. They have their own word because this word inye it just means alone or by itself, which is what the word wa means in Afroasiatic languages. The word wa means alone, and as you can see in Bantu languages, the word wa also means alone. In the Zulu version, it's dwa, as in ye dwa, alone. As you can see, the word wa to be alone in Egyptian and wa'o meaning to be solitude, which yedwa or wodwa means to be solitude, solely, alone in the Bantu languages. And you can see that if you now plug these two languages together, ing and wa seem to be the same word. Wedwa and ing is the same origin. Whereas you can see like there's a spread. One part of the Afroasiatic languages took the wa part, and one part of the Afroasiatic languages took the nye part, inye part. Two, if you look at sin, that will be sinni. As you can see in Egyptian, it's sinnu. In Hausa, it's biyu. These are preserving the same thing, but you only can see it if you introduce the Bantu bini, which means two. And you can see if you take labo, labo and bini, you take sin, which rhymes with bini, and you take bu and sinu, and you can see there that B changed to an S, or that S turned to a B. You take Thalatha, and that's Tatu. That one is less hidden. And you can see that Grad is probably Tatu or Thalatha, but then it's hidden because Khamta, again, Grad, Khamta, Tatu, Thalatha, Sadeh. Only Uku is kind of like out there. Four is Afar, Arba, Kuz, Hudu, Yafja. That's the only one where it's like completely out there. Shan is Shanu in Bantu. And you can see that Khamsa, Smus are probably a version of Shan, but you can't tell easily just by looking. Lix and Sita and Stis and Shita and Sarasao, these are all six, which is Stupa in Bantu languages. And of course, it carries on over and over, but I don't really want to go in. And you can see there, Muka in Egyptian is probably Shumi in Bantu languages. But as you remember, if you look at Afroasiatic words, a lot of their words, they take the first part and they put it in the second place. Just like the word Baba will be Uba or Ab. So Ubab sometimes instead of Baba. Like the word Gama in Bantu meaning name, and Maga'a in Somali or Afroasiatic languages meaning name. And you can see that all that's happened is that the let's say prefixes of them have flipped around. So if you look at the number 10, Kumi in Bantu languages would then correspond with Toban, Ashram, Ra, Goma, and Mukwa in Egyptian. But if you look carefully, right, you sweep them around and they make sense. But if you look carefully, you look here that if you apply the Bantu language, suddenly things become more obvious. Like Goma, the Go part is probably just a added prefix, and Ma part would be similar to this. Ma in ancient Egyptian, Mrwa in Tamazigh, and even Toban and Ashra could have a similar origin. Maybe not. But if you just look at it this way, suddenly the words start to have a similarity rather than being complete isolates, which they look like right now. Of course, 9, Tesa, Tsa, Tara, Piskia show you this in a very detailed way where you can, without doing any calculation, you can see that there's a similarity between Tesia, Tara, and Pisaka. And I'm telling you that it's related to the word Genda, which means to finish. And of course, Thamanya, if you look at Thamanya, it looks the same, which is 8. It looks the same as the number 8 in Kikuyu, which is the language I have up here, Inyanya, Thamanya, Inyanya, Takwasi, Chamanya, Chamanao in ancient Egyptian, Inyanya, Chamanyao, and Thamanya. And then Tam in Tamazigh, it's Tam, Takwasi. You see, these ones they're similar, but you have to add the Bantu in order to fill it in. The Bantu is the glue that holds these languages together. And of course, there's 7, but it doesn't relate to this Bantu word, which I will show you in another time which Bantu word it plugs into. It doesn't plug into this one here. And you can see there, Dhatu, which has to do with the number 3 because it's 6. So it has to do with the number 3 as well. And you can see there 6 is Sita, and I told you last time Stupa is there, is Ithadatu or Istandatu in Zulu as well. That's what it could also be. And you can see Sarasau, Shita, Stis, Lix. The languages are so similar that it's silly.